Hello, welcome to another exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. As you guys may can tell, my camera is still messed up. I have not gotten with Nick to fix whatever the update problem is, so I will be slightly less handsome than usual. But luckily for you, we have these two handsome gentlemen with us tonight. We are joined by Witan Daniel Young and Goði Trent East. And we are going to talk about building Gimlé. Before we get to that, though, news since last week. So I spent this last weekend in Montana celebrating Freyr's Harvest Feast with our amazing AFA family up in that part of the world. I got to spend some time with some folks that I haven't got to spend time with in a little bit, and I got to meet some members that I haven't gotten to meet before, and it was a really nice weekend. We had powerful bloats and some really good bonding time, and I got a chance to see the homestead that our folk builder Tyler Heinlein and his family are building up there, and it's a really special place, and I'm really glad I got to see that. Coming up very soon, and there is still time for you to make it, we are celebrating Winter Nights in New Hampshire. This is going to be the first time that we have celebrated a big AFA event that far north on that coast, and certainly the first time we've had a big event in New Hampshire. I am very excited to experience that and to see the folks that I've already seen from out there again and meet brand new folks that I've not gotten a chance to meet, and also to experience the amazing changing of the seasons in that part of the country. It's going to be absolutely beautiful, and looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with all of you fine people if you guys can make it. So if you are interested, if you can make that happen, any of your folk builders can get you all squared away. It's going to be a fantastic event. If you can make it to that, we got another one for you that's awesome. And if you can't make it, we still got another great event. So Feast of the Einherjar in South Dakota is coming up very soon. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. It's a nice spot. It's going to be the same spot we did it last year. So it's a really good location, and I'm looking forward to that. So I'd love to see you guys there. Again, if you're interested, your folk builder can get you all set up. Trying to think of what else off the top of the show I may be remiss in not reminding you on. I think that's good for now. So a lot of my current in Orlaw here as far as topics and themes that keep coming up and things that end up stacking and synergizing. About a month ago now, our Gothar had a meeting, and there was a question raised by a member that folks wanted, I don't know, some advice on, or some like what the Asatru perspective on was. And that was on what we refer to, I guess, the ideal situation being, or our goal or our ideal that we look towards building, or towards, the right order of how things should be. And so we're thinking of what that is expressed in an Asatru concept. Goði Trent East here posited that, our closest depiction of that was Gimlé. And I think that was really apt, and that's kind of the seed of this episode. And it was built upon a couple of different things. So a big focus of Freyr's Harvest Feast this last weekend, this is what I mean about themes stacking on one another, was kind of what those gentlemen are building out there on their homestead in their part of our AFA world. And not only what they're building there, but what certainly the men at that event, especially the young men, could be building within their own lives. And I think that really plays into what we want to focus on this week's episode, is talking about what we are building, what we are doing, what we are, the dream we are realizing in the world around us. And I think a lot of people, when they look at the world that they want or the world that they wish it were, often you can see that in terms of, I don't know, in terms of politics, depending on where you're sitting, in terms of economics, in a lot of different ways that are conditioned by circumstance. But I think fundamentally what we want to express and what is valuable about the Gimle that we are building is its relevance outside of any of those concerns or any of those circumstances. In Asatru, we build on principle. And principle can apply to politics, it can apply to economics, it can apply to any part of your life, but principle in and of itself is timeless. So one of the things that we're focusing on is what we can do and what we are doing in our current circumstance to achieve the dreams of our folk, the dreams of our ancestors, and the dream that we want to have for our children. And that's what I really want us to focus on tonight. In case anybody is, well, I say in case, every week we have new people listening and watching wherever they consume this. Good reminder, we are live on YouTube, on X, on BitChute. Oh, we're not on BitChute. Never mind. On Odyssey, on Entropy, on Twitch, Rumble, and VK. We come out on Fridays as a podcast as well on iHeartRadio, on Amazon Music, on Apple Music, and on Spotify. So there's a lot of different ways to consume this. As I said, we got new people listening and participating every week. So in light of that, Witan Young, can you introduce yourself to the folks that may not be familiar?
Sure. Thank you for having me again. Always a pleasure to be a guest on Victory Never Sleeps. I'm Witan Daniel Young. I am from Camden, South Carolina. I'm a member of the Asatru Folk Assembly for 6 years. I've been part of the clergy for the last 3, going on 3 years. And that's something that flew by. But yeah, it's my pleasure to be here and my pleasure to be your guest. So.
Excellent. And Trent, can you tell people a little bit about yourself in case they are not familiar?
Yeah, I'm Gothi Trent East. I'm from West Georgia. I've been an AFA member for a little over 9 years, 9.5 or so. And I have also been a part of the clergy for 3 years, exactly as long as Witan Young, down to the very minute, in fact.
All right. So to start off a little bit today, Daniel, can you explain to people what Gimle is and like what that is in our lore?
Sure. Gimle is a concept of a place that exists in Asgard on the Eidavoll Plain. And the etymology of the word translates to place protected from fire or place untouched by fire. It's a place where the gods gather and meet after the Ragnarok, after Surt's fiery sword has burned the earth. It's where the gods reconvene and recollect on the things of the past and look toward the future. They look back on the stories of the Jormungandr. They look back on the stories of the Allfather and his runes. And it's where the sons of Odin and the other gods that survive, the sons of Thor and many others, it's where they start the beginning of the next age. And I think it's a poignant topic for kind of the stuff that goes on and exists in our life now. And I'm sure we're going to touch on that as we go forward. But it essentially translates to fire shelter. It's the place where the gods gather and meet and kind of, I don't want to say post-game wrap-up type thing, but it's reflecting on what was and planning for what needs to be.
So Gimli is described as the most beautiful of halls. And I think there's a lot to be said. It's not just, it's not just a cool place to go that good people are rewarded with entrance in. It's a place that is untouched and beyond the reach of the flames of destruction. And that's a big theme here. I don't want to get too wrapped up on the Gimli in our myth cycle, because that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about an earthly Gimli that we are building within the husk of the world that we see around us. I don't think it should come as any great surprise to folks that there's a lot of things out there that we wish were different. But I think one thing in the day and age that we live in, with the media that we consume and the way we consume it, the focus is very often on big macro geopolitical things that we find disquieting. And there's a hyper focus on a lot of things that we don't necessarily have an immediate access to. But what I think there's far too little focus on is all of the things that we have a very immediate access to, and that many of us are working extremely hard to build and to make happen. And that's the thing that I want to talk to folks about this evening. As always, I would like to invite any and all of you guys to ask questions throughout the show. It's very much a question-based program as far as conversation goes, and we welcome anybody who has questions, who wants to ask them in a reasonable and respectful way. We would love to answer all of those questions. They can be about the topic at hand or about anything else. But one of the things that I wanted to kind of shed light on, in case people don't know, is the things that we are building and the things that we're building together. Now, the idea of Gimli comes about in the great cycle in our mythos that talks about Ragnarok and what happens during that event and what happens after it. But it's something that I think is applicable in the microcosm and the macrocosm. I think there are cycles of creation and destruction in the world around us all of the time. Some of those are small, some of those are large. But one that I think that's really relevant is the breaking of the troth with the Aesir that our ancestors did 1,000 years ago. Some more, some less, depending on where we come from. And the resurgence and the rebirth of Asatru in the middle of the last century. We are currently in that generation, or in the generation directly following that, to where we're in that time of building. waters have receded, the destruction has gone away, and what do? We're resetting things up. We're remaking things right. We're reoccupying the halls of the gods, and we're talking of the former days and the former things. We're recapturing our history. We're recapturing our identity, and we're resetting things the way they ought to be. We're finding the chess pieces in the grass and setting the tables back up. And that's very much symbolic of what we're doing in this reforging of Asatru. And we're still in a relatively early phase of that, but we see it all around us. So one thing that I'd like to, I don't know, ask or get you to shed light on, Trent, can you talk about some of the things that we have built in, since that reawakening of our folk soul with our founder Stephen McNallen until now? What things have we rebuilt? What progress have we made towards building that Gimle thus far?
Well, like you said, we're still early in the reforging of Asatru, but at the same time, we've done so much. I mean, 4 Hoffs dedicated to our gods, a 5th and 6th one already on the way. Sigerheim land, for the AFA, for Asatru, dedicated to Lord Tyr. We have the Asatru Academy. We have stirred sort of an awakening in just the consciousness of our folk. I can go to the Walmart in little old Cedartown, Georgia, and somebody will say, "Hey, I like your hammer," or I'll see another guy wearing a hammer. And they know what it is. They know it's not, comic book, Marvel, whatever. They know it's a real faith, even if they don't agree with it. And I'm in the Bible Belt, so typically they don't, but it's a recognizable thing, and it's slowly becoming more and more respected. And again, this is just the tip of the spear.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Not only the recognition of my hammer, but it seems like in recent years, I'd say in the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, not only they recognize, what it is, but they recognize it as Mjolnir, and they will, say as much and like completely get that, which is amazing to me because just, 2 decades ago, that was an extreme rarity, and now that's rather commonplace. But I think that's good that you mentioned that. So we have 4 Hoffs thus far that regularly our folk gather at to worship our gods, to celebrate our ancestors and our heroes, and to bond around the things that are most precious and most important to us. Beyond just that, they are outposts of this Gimle that we're talking about. They are physical, real locations that you can reach out and touch that are ours, they're tangible in the very, very literal sense of the word, but they're also tangible in a macro sense where people want to apply place and address and see it on a map and see it on stuff. It's kind of goofy to me, but it's such a cool feeling to be able to find each of our Hoffs on Google Maps. Like that's legit. People will ask for the address like it's a frat party that you're going to, that you got to have the secret directions and turn left on this and whatever. And we're like, no, just type it in the Google Maps. It's on there. You can follow the blue line. It'll take you right there. That in and of itself is a really, really special thing. And it's something that if you would have said to, folks during the free assembly days, it would have been mind-boggling on a lot of different levels. But the fact that we would be on there would be mind-boggling to them. And I hope it's something that I'll be very proud of. I know many of them are. But something that I was talking about earlier today, as a matter of fact, with Whitten Young, was what that looks like when stuff in the world goes haywire a little bit. Can you talk to people a little bit about how the massive response to COVID-19 affected us versus, the stuff that's outside of Gimlé?
Yeah, no, I would love to. My parents are the of the baby boomer generation, and come from that era where if the talking head on the TV says that something is going on, it's factual. There's no disputing that. It's indisputable because it was on CNN or Fox News or whatever. And during the height of the COVID-19 outbreak, my parents, that was the subject of conversation with them every time I talked to them, and we talked daily at the time. And I was so immersed in AFA stuff. 2020 was a big year for the Asatru Folk Assembly. That was the founding of Thorshoff in July, and then later that year the founding of Baldershoff had occurred. And then some of the media response to that had a lot of our attention. I was going through the Gothar program along with Goði East, and there's lots of stuff happening, and I was completely immersed in it. And I remember telling my parents at the time that might as well exist somewhere else, this idea of this pandemic. And my mother lamented the fact that I existed in a bubble at the time. And I was like, yeah, my bubble is really cool. And that was when it kind of occurred to me that I was thinking about the concept of Gimlé, that while the fiery sword of Surt was sweeping across the earth and burning things down, we were huddled inside. Huddled isn't the right word, but we were gathered inside this bubble, inside this place untouched by flame, and building something anew. And so we didn't approach the idea of COVID-19 with fear and all that. It was something we were all very aware of. We didn't get people sick and stuff, but that very same year, I had the Ericksons were at my house, and at the time there was, and I remember the news reports, there was like 90 confirmed cases of the coronavirus in South Carolina. Like 85 of them were in the county I live in, and we still moved about like nothing was going on. I remember I went to go grab some stuff to cook down at the local grocery store, and it shoved me so we could grab the last pack of ground beef and all that. And I was just thinking, what the hell are all these people panicking about? Because in my mind, it was non-existent. So I think the coronavirus stuff is a good example. And it wasn't just, what was happening here with me personally, locally. Trent and I were running up and down I-20 from Camden to the Atlanta area to visit every other weekend and studying together and jumping in cars and going up to, prepare for the opening of Thorshoff. And the, Meister Flavel flew out from Reno at, when the thing supposedly out, there was this outbreak and all that stuff. We were exchanging hugs and passing around horns of sacred mead and drinking from it. And there was no concept of danger because all the panic and stuff just seemed to exist elsewhere. It might as well have been on another planet.
That's the thing. We existed in the hall untouched by the flames. And that was really, really a special thing during that time. And this is just an example. As I mean, this can apply to whenever something goes strange. But when society decided to take a very radical turn in a direction that we didn't agree with, we had the ability to have locations where we could gather, where we could celebrate, we could worship, and we could carry on in spite of or without regard to the things going on in the world that were contrary to the way we would have it. we were able to, and I saw this in a lot of ways. There are a lot of people out there in the West, and I realize we have an international audience, but so much of the time we speak from an American perspective, because that's where we're from. We will have some of our international people on here from time to time, like our folk builder Eric over there in Sweden, but in general, we have a very heavy United States population here watching the show and participating. So a lot of folks that were religious for their entire life, they just stopped. During that particular situation, they went a year, 2 years. They used to go to church once a week, maybe twice, maybe 3 times with different Bible studies and other things. But they just shut down. There's a lot of people very isolated and alone and scared. And we were in a time where we didn't have to do that because we had that resource. We had the things that we were building. As Daniel mentioned, that's when we got both Thorshof and Baldershof during that time. And it's also kind of a precursor, or one of those things that solidified the intent and the idea of getting Sigerhan. Now, it takes some time to get these things going or whatever, but all 3 of us and our families are eventually going to live on Sigerhan with several other AFA families. And we're going to try to get as many of our AFA family as would like to move to the surrounding area so that we have that there too, so that we have an AFA village in which we can have a foothold in the world to interact with our community, and also a home to come home to where we are insulated from the things that we dislike out in the wide world. So we're operating from a place of strength and not a place of weakness. And that's something that we are currently building and putting our energy towards. And it's really special to be in a day and age where we have that. I'd like to take a second to acknowledge G.W. Farnsworth, a near constant contributor to the program. We appreciate you so much. Bought us 5 coffees. That's a $25 donation. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, you had mentioned, though, that we can approach the world from a place of strength and not weakness. And I would say also approach from a place of courage rather than fear. And I think that whole situation from 2020 to, I guess, 22 was evident of that. We saw the AFA flourish in ways that it had never flourished before. I think I don't like using the word safe space in the liberal sense that you hear it now, but the AFA itself, and of course our physical locations provide that. It was a place where we all felt safe, and it was a place that we all felt comfortable, and it was as easy to do as it would be to go check on a neighbor or something like that. We were all in constant contact. We're all pouring sweat inside those halls, getting them ready to be dedicated to our gods. The idea of Sigerheim was born out of that necessity. I think it was a place to be able to gather and call home, and those halls and that property in Tennessee do serve and will serve as a place of refuge, as a place to feel safe and to fellowship with people who think like you and believe like you, without fearing what's going on, without fearing or lamenting what's going on in the outside world, because that's beyond our control anyway. We control what we can control. What we can control is our own perspective on things. And I think the Asatru Folk Assembly is the ultimate white pill.
Well, so Couple of things, just to comment on a couple of things to see over in the chat. Booney Rat says he finally saw Sigerheim this weekend, and it's absolutely beautiful, which it is. And the vision for it is amazing, which it also is. And I'm very glad you went out and saw it, and so proud of it. So Daniel Young on the program tonight, he was the guy that went out there and did all the scouting for it. And we got it because he said it was, in fact, beautiful, and he could see that vision that we had for it there. And we trusted him, and turned out all right. It's an amazing, amazing spot. I don't think we could have done better. So I am so very, very excited about it. I'm glad you went and checked it out. We got a lot of amazing things that are going to be happening there in the coming years. Then I also see a comment, and I'm not aiming this at the guy who made the comment, because it's something that we run into a lot is unfortunately, the outside world doesn't want to leave you alone. No, it doesn't. But because we're out there building things like that, it largely does leave us alone in those places. It certainly leaves us alone at the locations that we've mentioned to you. Can I guarantee that for all eternity? No, of course I can't. But I can guarantee you it left us a lot more alone there than if we were renting out spots or trying to gather in other locations that we didn't own at those times. And I can also guarantee you that we have the means to look out for one another and take care of one another for the times to where the outside world does intrude into our lives. And that's something we wouldn't have if our focus was on, the bad guy outside and not on the cool things that we want for ourselves, for our families, and for our children. And that's kind of the great thing about what we're talking about here. And the concept of the Gimle that we are building is, in really bad times, it is a place of refuge from things. It's a place to come home and have folks looking out for each other, helping each other through, taking care of each other, and making the best out of a bad situation. In the normal times, it's a fantastic spot to do the things we want to do, live the way we want to live, and raise our children the way we want to raise them. And in great times, it is a wonderful place to serve as a beacon and a place of distribution, and to go out and interact with the world from, as an outpost to show our very best face to the world around us. And we do that right now all the time. We make, whatever the fake news or any of the other big things that we all, worry about may have to say, communities where we actually exist around our physical locations, those people by and large love us and enjoy us being in the community and tell us so frequently. Those people have a positive vision of who we are, and we're building reputation there. There's a lot of things we can't do anything about, and that's unfortunate. I wish we could. And where we can, we will. But there's a whole lot of things we can do a lot of stuff about, and we're doing those things, and we're able to do them much better and much more if we're doing them all together. I got a question. So the Wolf Throne wants to ask, you mentioned how our ancestors broke troth with the Aesir and embraced Christianity. Do you believe the gods punish those who break troth with them? Let's start with you, Trent. What are your thoughts?
The short answer is no, but with the caveat that it's because the gods have bigger things going on. They're more concerned with cosmic order and natural law and the, 9 worlds. They're not. And I said this in the spiritual excellence chat on MeWe to someone the other day, but outside of a few mortal men, maybe, I don't think the gods are really looking at us too much outside of the good things that we do. I think, it certainly is a shame that our ancestors did break troth with the Aesir, and maybe when it was enough of our folk, they did notice, but I don't think any random individual peasant or whatever that was forced to do so was somehow punished in the afterlife. I think men like Olaf Tryggvason, I hope, he's punished. I hope ones like that were punished. But by and large, I think the Aesir have bigger things going on. And like I said, other than a few mortal men here, like maybe Founder McNallen and the Altera Gothi, they're not keeping too close of an eye on us in that sense, as far as, making a list and checking it twice.
What are your thoughts, Daniel?
I certainly think that people that actively broke troth with our gods would be punished in some form or another, and what that looks like, I don't know. I think, Gothi East touched on it. The people who followed the lead and were forced to conversion or whatever. I don't think they'll be punished, but I also take the same stance, though, that I think the gods are more worried about the grander picture. And we're talking about generations of people that were, that had that cord severed. And I think the ones that severed that cord, I think their portion is on the strand.
So this is kind of an interesting question. I think that there are a couple of things at work here. I think that, no, as a one for one, I don't think the gods are in the business of like doling out misfortune to you when you make dumb life choices or when you aren't honorable in your life. I think that when the time comes to make judgments about you, certainly if you have their attention, but I think your ancestors certainly do. And what else I think happens is there is a mechanism in our cosmos that does that. The web of Earth makes those things kind of happen. When you do the right stuff at the right time in the right way, good things occur to you. When you are a person of little honor and you make poor choices and you break your troth with the Aesir, bad things come your way and tend to happen, and you reap the consequences of that in the the Orlaw and the Haminya you build for yourself. Those things occur, and it's not, the gods coming behind you and kicking you down the stairs. It's a pattern of your efficacy in the world being greatly diminished due to your lack of worth. And I think that's a very real thing. Now, for example, if you do draw the attentions of the gods and you do something particularly offensive to them, then certainly the gods can do what they like to you. And in some cases, they have. Usually when we see that in the lore, it's in the case of kings or people that represent more than just their mortal existence. If you lead a nation away from their troth to the gods, that's liable to get a little bit more attention than if you just happen to, quit and go join the Orthodox Church or whatever you decide to do. But I think a common theme is when people do that, their lives kind of go out of whack, bad stuff starts happening, their life falls apart, and that's because they lose spiritual might, they lose luck. Luck is a very real concept, and it's not something inflicted by our gods. It is something that's a result of your own spiritual agency and the choices that you make with it. But yeah, it's always the caveat of, with the asterisk, gods can do what they want. If you particularly anger them and they want to, become your enemy, then, woe be unto you and please stay away from me. I don't want to get any on me. Also, over in the comments section, so bringing people up to speed if you didn't watch, not last week, 2 weeks ago. It seems like it was a lot more recent than all that. But yeah, 2 weeks ago, Cliff and I went into some stuff, and maybe it was, yeah, I think. All right, they start to run together. Anyways, on a previous episode, there was a video that I guess has been lingering out there trying to, I don't know, defame the AFA and our founder, Steve McNallen. It's an old video, and we get haters all the time. It's a thing. And so we answered some questions as part of that, and then comment over on the side. I made a vid defending the AFA from that vid, borrowing the part of last week's VNS, the part that Matt answers the attack vid. Then I get a bunch of counter signal comments. Well, of course you do. And I think something to realize on that, there are people that have genuine disagreements with us that they really believe in, or have some, reason that they think's good to take issue with us. And there's room for that. And I understand that there's people that are going to have differences of opinion. But something that I run into far more common than that is really, really toxic, negative, bad people that just want to be contrary for contrarian's sake. I think some of them are dishonest in it, and I think some of them are also mentally ill, and I don't use that. I mean, fine, I'll own it. I'll use it as a pejorative, but that's not what I mean. I mean, these people are genuinely depressed, and they're so far in their defeatism that they create a narrative that anybody that has the audacity to be successful, it must be a scam. It must be something nefarious. It must, it can't possibly be that some people just work really hard, really consistently for a long time because they love their gods and love their folk and do their best and are able to accomplish things. Because that thought, I think, is scary to them and makes them confront their lack of doing stuff, or it makes them confront their failures in life as maybe being a result of things they did and not, the overarching conspiracy of people out to get them. And I think it's much easier to just, blame it on some boogeyman, whatever you want to call it, and write off anybody who is successful as there must be some hidden hand behind it. And that's unfortunate, but it's something that we've dealt with for a very long time. It's something I don't see, disappearing in the future. I'd like to see it be less and less. So some people are mad because I look like a Fed. Apparently.
What does that even mean?
Normal.
Because I'm handsome, because I don't look homeless. I don't know. I don't know what that means to them, because I don't have a swastika tattooed on my face. I don't know. I don't know what I think that means. That's in the eye of the beholder. I think anybody that is successful looks like a Fed to these folks. Also, 501c3 churches are always subversive because success is bad, I guess. But those things speak for themselves. I can, beat up and be mean to those people verbally on here, but that's not really, doesn't get us anywhere. I think that those kind of comments are self-evident in their ridiculousness. But that is something that is relevant to today's topic that I think is worth mentioning. We always think that what holds us back from creating the world that we want in our case today, creating Gimlé is, some big other force that twirls its mustache or has an oversized nose or various things. And in my life, I have found far more often it is members of our own folk that can't get out of their own way. And because they're toxic, won't get out of our way too. And I've seen that. I think a lot of us have encountered that in smaller circles if we haven't encountered them in circles adjacent to this, either in Asatru or things that are, nominally for the betterment of our folk. In those macro senses, I think we've seen that very often. But in micro senses, you see it in families. You see it where a member of the family hasn't achieved what they want to in life and becomes abusive and destructive to everyone around them because they're not going to let anybody else be successful either. I saw that with my uncle when he was suffering from alcoholism. That was one of the things is sometimes when people haven't achieved what they want, it becomes really toxic and it metastasizes. And there's something that is a phenomenon I think we've all heard of called the crab in the bucket. But crabs will try, if you get a bunch of crabs and you put them in a bucket, and this is a thing, they can't get out of the bucket because when one crab tries to, the other crabs pull it back down into the bucket. So if they all can't get out, they won't let any of the crabs get out. And so that means we're all eating crab that night. Some of these crabs could escape and go back out to the ocean, but no, the lazy crabs at the bottom of the bucket won't allow the other crabs to be able to get out because maybe they can't get out too, or whatever goes on in their little crab brains. But we see that with our folk a lot, to where there's just some really, really negative, toxic people out there that won't try. They try to tear down anything successful. And that threat from quote unquote within is much, much bigger and more present and has a greater effect on your day to day than a lot of the bigger things we want to project that onto.
I think it's a clear indicator too, and it's a clear symptom of the soul sickness that our founder Stephen McNowland often talks about. Is that it's almost a fear of success that holds them back. If I become successful, then I'll be held accountable. I'll be held to a standard that I don't know that I am capable of keeping, which is also insane to me. Surround yourself with successful people, like the two gentlemen I'm sharing the screen with. That success gets contagious, and also, but there is responsibility that comes with that success, and a lot of people don't want to face that part of it either.
Yeah, comfort kills.
And you're right on about the soul sickness. Part of our job as Gothar is to try to help our folk overcome and heal from that soul sickness. And I think everybody on this screen has spent a lot of hours and a lot of heartbreak on trying to counsel people who are deeply, deeply afflicted with that soul sickness. And some of them are not yet able to overcome it, unfortunately. And I think, another analogy, and then I will back up off my amateur psychology here, but I think it rings true. I think ladies are aware of this and see this. They may see it through a different lens. I think I know that most all of us, that are adult men, especially those of us that have been adult men for any amount of time, have known women that get in abusive relationships and are always in an abusive relationship and won't leave it and won't break free of it. And it's hard and it hurts and it's heartbreaking and you want to help as best you can. But you can't save them unless there's something internally that they genuinely want something better. What happens and what I've come to realize, misery and bad things that you are accustomed to are often easier and less scary than unknown things that you don't know how to deal with and that you're not accustomed to. And so they know how to live and how to navigate in a very unhealthy and destructive situation. But they don't have that point of familiarity. They don't know what it's like to be in a spot that's not like that. And that unknown is terrifying. The unknown is one of the scariest things, because you don't know how to brace for it. You don't know how to prepare for it. What if you mess it up? What if you try and you fail? It's a lot easier not to try and to make up an excuse for it than to try something and fall on your face and deal with that and be embarrassed or whatever that is. And that's hard. And I'm not going to pretend like it's not. But that, I think, a lot of our people suffer from, especially when they've had disappointments earlier in their life. It's easier to just sit back and to heckle and to come up with an excuse why you can't than to go out there and try and risk failing. And it all harkens back to, and I don't have the whole thing memorized, but it's, one of my favorite things that I've ever read, heard, or encountered is President Teddy Roosevelt's Man in the Arena speech. And I think it encapsulates this in a very, very succinct and very poignant way. Commentary over on the side says, because I do not have tattoos and I am clean cut, I look like I am a cop or fed or insert authority figure that represents order over on the side. So as far as all the stuff that we're building, and we have quite a bit that we're building, what can you articulate for folks that we plan on building in the, within the next 10 years kind of range?
Within 10 years, the Asatru Academy will be finished, K through 12. I'm sure we'll have an adult Asatru education program by then. 10 years, I think we can get 4 more Hoffs in 10 years at least. Sigerheim will be a night and day difference. It's already beautiful, of course, but it's largely right now it's beautiful because of the potential. In 10 years, it will be beautiful because of all the families living on it and all of what we made out of that potential. The AFA will be surely more well known. I'm sure there'll be, more really badly written hit pieces that bring members to us in droves, like it always does. It on drop-down menus on websites for government stuff, we have to select your religious beliefs. Asatru will be one of them. Lots of little things that we don't really think about like that, as well as the bigger things like Sigerheim and Hoffs and recognition.
So you brought up something there that I'd like you to elaborate on a little bit for folks that might not be familiar. Oh, and before we do that, Alicia Jones joins in the chat room, longtime lurker. Appreciate that. She kind of stepped into the middle of strange conversation that she didn't know how it got started. That's okay. I think a lot of people are in there. I think it'll sort itself out, and I hope you get it. If you have questions, please feel very free to ask them. And I'm glad that you've been lurking for a long time. I'm glad you're in our chat room. Trent, could you tell people a little bit more about the Asatru Academy, what that is, what that looks like if people are not familiar with it?
Yeah, so the Asatru Academy is exactly what it sounds like. It's a homeschooling program. It's a complete curriculum run by my good friend, or all our good friend, I suppose, Gothi Stam. He is the dean. He's assisted by folk builder Sarah Alt and a handful of other really awesome folk. I think we have kindergarten through third grade right now, maybe more. It's going to serve as just a complete different option rather than the public school mess, the certs fire, if you will, that kind of surrounds us. That's when I think of Gimlé, a big part of it is the Asatru Academy.
Absolutely, it is. And what's tricky about that is it's not as obvious. It's not something that we've got a brick and mortar schoolhouse to kind of put a face on it. But it's one of the things that we're doing that's, got the potential to have the biggest payoff over time. It is Gimlé in the world of educating your child. I think a great many of us are very concerned with the state of public education, certainly here in the United States. And I say that, I'm sure there are some of you out. Okay, I say that from a couple perspectives. First, I think the concept of public education isn't a horrible thing. My mother was a first grade school. She taught a variety of grades, mostly first grade, but she was a public school teacher for 30 years of her life, dedicated herself to teaching kids how to read. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. But things have taken a dark turn in a lot of places. And I also acknowledge there's probably some of you that live in certain counties and certain school districts that, may be very, very good at educating and at, reinforcing traditional values. But I don't think that's the case in an increasing number of school districts. And one of the things that we aim to do, certainly here in the United States, but we're open to making it work in other parts of the world that allow for homeschooling. So we have a homeschool program designed to help us teach our children the things that we value, the things that reinforce tradition, reinforce honorable living, reinforce a correct view of the world. And a lot of people find themselves unable to do that. And we want to make it as easy as possible for parents to be able to homeschool their children. And a big part of that isn't just, and so Nick says over on the side, if you guys are unaware, we are constantly enrolling. You can join at any time with that. And we've currently got curriculum available for kindergartners through sixth graders. So all of elementary is currently, available. So one of the things is not only providing the, course material stuff. A big, big part of it is helping parents through the process. The concept, especially depending on the state that you live in, is scary. I know a lot of people aren't familiar with it, may be uncomfortable, may not really know if it's something they can do, may have doubts about how hard it might be. First, it's easier in the vast majority of places than you would imagine. Secondly, we want to make sure that we are there to hold parents' hands through the process to make sure that you and your family are successful, and to take away some of that concern about, not knowing what to do. We want to lean on our system, on Gothi STAM, but also on parents who are involved in it, who have already been involved in homeschooling their children for a long time. Witan Young homeschools one of his children, and he knows about that. We have a number of parents that do very successfully and have for years. It is very, very doable, and we would love to give parents that option if that's something they'd like to pursue, because I think it's very important for our future. Looking at stuff over in the chat room, got a kind of an active chat room tonight. Not a lot of questions stacking up. Witan Young, is there anything you would like to tell folks in regards to building Gimle in the world and in their lives?
Well, I think you touched on it, is finding a way to breed that inner success, and that I don't want to say stoicism, but to rise above the flames of chaos, the winds of chaos, and to build that inner sanctum with the concept of using your kin fence as its own defense against the waves of chaos that approach, and not just approach, that have been encroaching in on Western society for the last 5 decades or more. I think one of the things that you've bounced off Trent about, you asked the question, what is it that we're building? And I think one of the most important things that we build is something that maybe we don't touch on enough because we view the collective, is building the individual. By attaining that success and sharing the successes with your friends and your kids. When we're together and we get to see the success that people achieve in their personal lives, it becomes contagious. When I first joined AFA, I went to a moot in North Carolina. It was a guy's house that was a folk builder at the time, and he's living on this really nice golf course, and living really nice. Wife driving a really cool German car, and look, everybody measures success by different things.
They got a Boykin Spaniel.
And they got a Boykin Spaniel, and he talks funny. But
the Spaniel?
Sure. But anyway, no, I was really blown away by that, and I had the envy of, not that I can't have this, so I don't want you to have it, kind of that crab in the bucket syndrome that you were talking about. It was like, why do I not have a piece of this? Why do I not have a really cool place that I would be comfortable with inviting people over to and stuff like that. And and this is just one very small example, but that lit a fire in me to bring my family up out of a bad living situation and put them in something much more sustainable and something to be proud of. And building the individual along with our collective love, our collective haminga permeates each individual. And we talk about this concept quite often in our Gothar talk, that our success is your success and your success is our success. So the more successful we become as a whole, the more it elevates the individual. And I think I could think of any number of examples where I've seen people overcome the things that held them back. And I think in large part, and I would almost say 100%, because of the support and success of the Asatru Folk Assembly and the folks that make that up. And that's something else too that when we say the AFA, we're not just talking about the 3 faces you see on the screen, or the Svans and the Ericsons that you see on our screen all the time. It's all of us. Every one of us is a contributor to that group haminga. It isn't just the guy in Reno that's making the calls. He's the face of the AFA, but he isn't the AFA. We are the AFA. and we are Asatru. We aren't just the church of Asatru. We are the religion of Asatru. And I think us reforging this path has awakened a spirit in all of us to try to chase that horizon like our ancestors did. You know, that first Aryan man that was on the Caspian steppe that looked upon the setting sun and wanted, what lies beyond that horizon. And I think this reforging of our faith and reforging of our folk soul is opening that concept in all of our minds and all of our souls, has reignited that flame. We talk a lot about, having a fire within, and that fire being a beacon to our gods, and just as importantly, it's a beacon to each other. And Matt brought up the concept of the namaste, or the divine in me recognizes the divine in you. We're not in the crazy liberal concept of it, but we know when we meet the guy. I knew when I met Trent that he had something special in him, but I recognized that flame that he had burning inside of him, and that hunger for more, that hunger for better, that hunger for success, and I see that all across the AFA, from the average member that we meet at our Hoffs or at our national events or our moots, but all across. So I think one of the best things that we have built is we have built each other.
All right, so a couple of things while I'm thinking about it, and I think those points are really well made. So I got a couple of things. I hope I get to them. If they occur to me down the line, I will let y'all know. But I think a lot of people, when they look at goals or they look at projects to be engaged in, they very often look in terms of either or, and that's not really where the AFA is at with it. The question is all. There's a lot of these things that can be done simultaneously, or folks can do lots of different ones in different phases of their life and different places that they're at that all kind of synergize. So building our dreams and building what we want to do. One thing I want to make really clear first, we are surrounded every single day with opportunities for success. It is very easy to see all of the things that we don't have, that we can't do, that we whatever. What's a bigger challenge, but far more useful? What can we do? What options are available to us? What things can we do to achieve the things we want in our lives, internally and externally, within our family, within our community, within our AFA? There's a lot of things we can do, and those present themselves in really different ways. I mentioned that I spent this last weekend up on Tyler Heinlein's homestead. And for him, that's a huge part of the world he wants to build and create. And to his credit, of all of the people that I hear talk about that, he's the one that I know that's gone out and done it and is in the process of doing it and evolving it, but been out there for years making things happen. And that's awesome. But that can look different to different folks. You don't got to go homestead in the middle of nowhere. You can do something urban. If you're a guy that lives in an apartment, there's stuff you can do. There's always things to make the world that you want, and what you want personally in your life and for your family and for your career, or whatever you want, may be real different than what some of the rest of us want. That doesn't make it wrong. There's ways to do it. There's not one right way, but there is one wrong way, and that's sitting on the couch, inundating yourself with a flow of doom porn and not trying. Trying is good. The lack of trying is bad. I think for the rest, there's a lot of right ways to do things, but sitting around waiting on someday or a perfect scenario is not that right way. And that can mean a lot of different things.
Matt, you could drop the mic on that.
So, and I tried to, but we got the narrow camera thing. I got to have the T-Rex on mic drop. So that said, a couple of things I wanted to bring up. The adorners of grandma's couch. So one thing when we're talking about homeschooling, I sent Nick the link if he can throw that up. The Homeschool Legal Defense Association, not really good on their branding because it doesn't clearly say on their homepage, it just gives the initials. But if you can throw that up there, it's a fantastic organization. Whether you want to homeschool with the AFA or on your own, or you know anybody out there that would like to do that, these folks are a very, very helpful resource on it. So I would encourage you, if it's something you're thinking about, go to that website, check it out, take a look what it looks like in your state. It's a very, very good resource. And yes, I say that as somebody trying to push the Asatru Academy. I also say it as a father who's going to homeschool his daughter. So it's given me a lot of peace of mind being able to look at it. Also, seemingly unrelated, but really important, and something that somebody brought to my attention today that haven't talked about and beat this drum in a while. Get your will done. If you are an old man or an old woman, get your will done. It's self-evident. Do it. It's important. It's something you need to have done. But you may think, but wait, I'm young. I've got a lot of time. Get your will done anyways, and get it done different when you get older and have more stuff or different stuff. We don't always know what happens, and I hope you do have a long time. I hope we all have a long time. But there's no excuse, because I found a resource, doyourownwill.com. It's free. I talked to our law speaker just to make sure. He is a practicing attorney and member of the bar. It is legally binding and legitimate in all 50 states, and I believe they have some stuff for Canadian provinces. Don't quote me on that. But at least here in the United States, it's legit. Do it. Get it done. Also important, please send our law speaker an original signed copy. If it needs to be signed and notarized in your state, do that too. It's not only important that you have a will, but that you have a will in the hands of people who are going to advocate for lack of a different term, for your will to be done. I have seen in the Asatru Folk Assembly, the vast majority of the people who are part of our AFA family who have passed have not had wills. Some of those people had family that were first in the know on what they wanted to have happen with both their remains, their funerary service, and the distribution of their assets. So what you need is both family who know what you want, but also family who are inclined to do what you want. Some folks have had that. Other folks have not had that. One young man who passed away, unfortunately, his parents decided out of the blue, with no ethnic connection to it, they just thought it'd be a good idea to convert to Judaism. His remains reside eternally now in a Jewish cemetery, and that's not what he wanted. But he didn't have a will, so that's stuff that can happen. Especially if you have children, get a will done. Specify who takes care of those children. Don't leave it up to chance. You have the ability to make it happen. Concerns about cost or about getting a lawyer and about all this stuff, cool, do that when you want to and how you want to. But until then, get this free one done. You can do it in about 10 minutes. Send a copy to our law speaker, and we can try to advocate for you if something were to happen. It's really important, so I'm going to keep being obnoxious about it. because I want you guys to have what you want should something bad happen. I wouldn't say this. Before I told anyone else to do this, I did it myself and sent him a copy. I don't want to be that guy that tells everybody else to do it. It's not going to do it myself. I don't believe in that. But yeah, I got those. Now we have a couple of questions that have come up. So one's kind of split into two here. We'll go on the question that was in the middle, and then we'll get to the other question. Does Matt like my AI song, Who Do the Gods Call, in bluegrass style? I remember he likes bluegrass. Ryan O'Ryan, I have no idea what this song is, and I did not know it exists. If I knew how to access this song, I may consume it and I may like it. I may not. I won't know until I hear it, but it sounds intriguing, and I think I'd be entertained either way. More meaty question from Vril the Barbarian. I have a question. Will the AFA develop a philosophy / worldview that can be brought to its defense? In continuance of the previous question, a complete epistemology, metaphysics, and morality. I am a polytheist philosopher, and I'm currently working through this myself. I was wondering if the AFA had already tackled this. So, first, I think, no, in a way that is going to answer your question in the way you want it answered, no. But I think that the first significant attempt towards that is something that I worked really hard on over the last year and is up on our website, and I think Nick can get a link to it, is, he read my mind, the Asatru Academy. And this is a, as concise as I could make it, statement of our beliefs in the most straightforward way that I knew how to present it, and in a way that hopefully built upon itself to, in a self-contained kind of way, make sense. And I hope that works. A lot of what you said is philosophical in speak that I think a lot of people who aren't schooled in that or familiar with that system, myself included in a lot of ways, might not know exactly what you're talking about and what you're looking for, or how, you mentioned that you are a philosopher. I don't know what that means or to what degree, but I think you have an idea in your head very clearly of what that looks like. I would really like it if you could contact me, Matt Flavel at runestone.org, and let me know like an outline or what that looks like, or what you would want to see in something like that. And I do think we can make progress towards it. It's something I think I'd like for us to have, but I don't really know what all is entailed in the presentation that you're looking for. But certainly I think that's something that we're capable of, and something that I'd like for us to have for folks like yourself that want to examine this through a more traditionally philosophical light. So if you could do that, I would really appreciate that. JV asks, I was reading about Milton Hershey and how he founded a Christian school with his fortune. It was open to poor, healthy white male orphans. A mere 20 to 30 years after his death, all of these qualifiers were destroyed by the government and or discarded by the trustee. I believe that since Christianity is a universalist religion, the trust carried a fatal flaw that could be exploited. a good lesson to learn. Any thoughts? Trent, what are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, the fatal flaw being that, as you mentioned, JV, Christianity is a universalist faith. There's no reason to restrict it to young, healthy white males or whatever the curriculum was. In Asatru or any ethnic faith, Judaism, Shinto, the list goes on, Yoruba, I don't know. It's the logic, at least, is there that you could have qualifiers for something like that, as we do in the AFA, and it's completely legal, even among the fires of cert that we sometimes find ourselves surrounded by. So, yeah, the fatal flaw is that he picked a universalist faith to do that. Not that he would have known any better, I suppose, but that was the issue. And I suppose also not really vetting his trustee, before handing the reins over.
Daniel, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I mean, nothing more than what Trent just said, but I do want to point out that our ulterior Gothic lineage is protected from that. That our current high priest is still working in the vision of our previous high priest and pushing it even further. And, something that Trent mentioned about the gentleman that passed away probably didn't vet his trustee as well. That's something that we talk about on the AFA, have talked about on the AFA Witan at length, that the vision of the ulterior Gothi is protected and preserved long after his retirement or passing through the veil. And I think that's vitally important. So when whomever ulterior Gothi Flavel chooses as his successor, he's still got decades to vet those people. So I'm not in the least concerned about that.
In case I don't, I made my own will and I've got it documented what I want to happen, because it's important. It's part of responsibility. So realistically, a couple of points. One of the things on that to protect, not so much who gets to benefit from it, but more to protect the integrity of what's being taught. We have a lot of discretion because one of the qualifiers, while a lot of those things don't necessarily stand up in court as qualifiers for such a thing, membership in our church does. So you have to be an AFA member to be a member of the Asatru Academy. That's important from a legal standpoint. The other thing is it's not a paid service. It is something provided to our members, who are certainly welcome to donate if they would like. But when money changes hands, it opens up additional scrutiny from people who'd want to change things or make it woke or whatever the concern might be. Secondly, it doesn't sound like the government came in and did stuff. It sounds like, could be the government or the trustee. So those things address government intervention. The other big thing is there's a trustee or a group of trustees. One of the biggest things that has subverted attempts in the Asatru sphere to move forward has been democratization, where there's councils and groups of people and boards and things. The more of that there is, the more chance, you vote the wrong people into that, and then they vote you right into, something drastically different. And we've seen that time and time again. And it's one of the reasons that, the AFA is a theocratic autocracy, that it's, run by the ulterior Gothi, so that each of us that sits in this chair, not literally, but figuratively, is responsible to maintain the integrity of what we're doing. And that's a really important responsibility. And it's much better carried when the torch is passed from one to the other than when stuff's left up to some kind of voting body. So that's one of the reasons that we do that. It's really important. And also, and this is just a thing to conceptualize, I'm much more concerned about the integrity of the things that are taught rather than if somebody who doesn't share our worldview were to happen upon our curriculum or to learn from the stuff that we do. I think all of the rainbow of the children out there are probably better served getting some kind of homeschooling than the current public school situation. And if that's the worst case scenario, that somebody who's not one of us gets a hold of our secret homeschooling program, then, good, they get to learn how to read and, maybe have something better for themselves. But our focus is on our members. You have to be a member to be part of the Asatru Academy, and the membership requirement is the most effective at keeping that contained and keeping control over what's taught in that. The next question. As an AFA member, is there a study group to learn and master the lore and esoteric spiritual practices / runes, etc.? Trent, is there such thing?
The short answer is yes. My friend Gothi Plord does a lore study currently on the Heimskringla every Tuesday night, I believe. I'm sure producer Nick can get you more details on that. The lore in general, there's no dedicated study for that outside of the episodes of VNS previously covering the lore. Rune studies are a thing that I think all of our Gothar would like to do. And I know Githya Plord has done one in the past. I believe Witan Spawn has done one. But honestly, the best thing for you if you're looking to learn any of that, message a Gothar Githya of your choice or multiple Gothar of your choice and just ask them a question. My favorite thing in the world is when somebody says, "Hey, Trent, explain this thing about Asatru to me." It makes my whole week because I get to, nerd out about my favorite thing. So any information you want to know, there's not necessarily a dedicated AFA study for it, but we can get you the information you want quickly and with accuracy.
Something else on that. So I think that Gothi Plurd's is probably the biggest outreach of a lore study that I know about, but I know that countless groupings of AFA members under folk builders, under Gothar, do lore studies, do rune studies, do studies of the things, of our values, of the esoteric things, of all the things you asked. Those things happen in a lot of different ways. The best way to get connected with that is to talk to your local folk builder, and they can hook you up with what's going on in your area. Now, there are some like Gothi Plurds that, you can call into, and they're done over a great distance. And that's advantageous with the current spread of membership. But there's also folks that have people over to their house and do lore studies, such as man in the middle, Daniel. Would you like to talk about that and add anything?
Sure. Yeah. If you live live within driving distance of Central South Carolina, you can join us once a month here at my house, where we are currently studying Chris Travers' The Serpent and the Eagle. It's an introductory book into runic esotericism, and it's a very well written book. And we're going to move on to other things too. We're going to study Nine Doors of Midgard, The One-Eyed God, Elder Gods by Pollington, and so on and so forth. I'm really glad that question got asked, because it was one of the things that when I first started studying Asatru before being an active practitioner of the faith, was the whole learning process is so fun and so engaging. I think the day I stop learning, I'll pack it all in, because it's a never-ending process. And I'm not one of those people to say Asatru is the religion that comes with homework, but it does require a lot of discernment and reflection and study, and the constant need to learn. But yeah, if you live within driving distance of Central South Carolina, stop by, and we'll share a meal, and we'll study some stuff together.
Absolutely. And I know that goes on a lot of places besides that. That's just one that I know about off the top of my head. A lot of people have different lore studies and rune studies and everything in between. So do reach out. That's there. And then, as always, if you find one, still message one of your Gothar. If you don't find one, message one of your Gothar. Messaging a Gothi and having your questions directly answered and talked through with you is a really valuable experience, and it's something that all of us are very, myself included, or maybe even especially, are very excited to extend to you guys, to share with you. As Trent said, it's one of these things I'm very appreciative when I hear of people that listen to this show and enjoy it. A couple of the guys that I met this last weekend said they felt like they knew me because they've been listening to the show for a long time. That's very much appreciated. It means a lot to me, because at the core, this is me talking about what I truly, truly love, and sitting here and drinking Cayman Jacks with some of my very best friends, and talking about something that's near and dear to my heart. So we always look for opportunities to talk about Asatru with our folk. That's really, really special. So, because I mentioned it, they were at Costco, and they were a cool idea. And this grilled pineapple margarita one, I would highly recommend, because it is delicious. Very high in the carbohydrates. Putting it out there. Appreciate that, Nick. If the fine folks at Cayman Jack would like to sponsor this program, we would appreciate that. It would be awesome if we had sponsored commercials for Cayman Jack and for Gorilla Snot. Be solid in promoting those products. Oh, okay, cool. So producer Nick suggests over in our private chat that I should tell folks where they can find how to contact their local folk builders. And there you go. He's got the graphic ready. These colored districts correspond to one of our Hoffs. Yes, I realize that they are geographically massive, but that gets smaller every time we get a Hoff. But yeah, each of these Hoff districts has a website that is listed on this graphic. On the website, it's got a lot of cool stuff. It's got a calendar of events, but it's also got contact information for your local Gothar and folk builders, and that's very useful. Like I said, these people would love to talk to you. If you are a member, cool. If you are not a member, still, these people would love to talk to you and help you out. Something to note on here, I know this is just the United States, and we don't have Alaska or Hawaii, which incidentally are in the Odenshoff district. Also in the Odenshoff district are our members in Australia and New Zealand. In the Njordshoff district are our members in South America and in South Africa. In the Thorshoff district are all of our members in Europe. And then if you draw kind of a straight line up, there's too many provinces to really itemize them all out. but our Canadian members correspond to the district that is below them geographically. So yeah, I would encourage you guys absolutely to contact folks on those sites. They would love to help. Just like this show and just like Trent talked about, this is something we truly love to do. And so it is never an inconvenience. It is always welcome for you guys to reach out if there's any way we can help you or share what we know with you and help you in your journey to increase your relationship with the Aesir. Catching up on the chat over on the side. Side note, Vril the Barbarian, I would enjoy having an actual conversation with you in addition to your kind of discussion on philosophical framework, because I think that might be fruitful to what we're doing. Okay. So Project Hate. This is Corey from last week. Sorry for calling you guys white supremacists. You all are actually pretty cool. Just want to ask, do you worship Loki? First, thank you. I appreciate that. People come from a lot of different spots, and, you know, I don't know where you first heard about us or whatever, but there's a lot of name calling goes on out in the world, and we all start somewhere. I appreciate you giving us a chance and saying that we're pretty cool. We try. Do we worship Loki? Absolutely not. Asatru. People will translate that to mean belief in the Aesir. It does mean that, but if you trace the etymology, it means something deeper than that. It means true to the Aesir. That doesn't just mean believing in, it means loyalty to. We are loyal to the Aesir, and that's fundamental to who we are and what we do.
It's mac and cheese.
You got mac and cheese on your face? You should go wash your face.
My drink my milk and then you can water cup.
Word to the wise, if you get mac and cheese on your face, wash your face. So no, we don't worship Loki. We don't worship the forces of chaos because they stand in enmity to our gods. Loyalty means taking sides. We side with the Aesir and the forces of order. And I think that's really important. It's not just that we believe in a certain cosmology. We are actively loyal to the Aesir, and we actively build relationship with them. And I think that's a really important distinction. I think a lot of people who are involved in Asatru, people involved in paganism think that it's enough to just accept an alternate cosmology from the monotheists, and that's not the case. It's about actively siding with the gods against the force of chaos and choosing to be on the side of good instead of on the side of bad. And I think it may sound simplistic, but it's also very true and very important. Gentlemen, do you guys have anything to add on that? Daniel?
No, nothing to add.
Trent, what about you?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, and it is simplistic, and it sounds simplistic, I guess, when you say it. It kind of is just good versus evil, good versus bad, right versus wrong. But when you boil it down to it, it really is. The Aesir are right, and Loki is wrong. That's all there is to it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't mean it to be flip or overly simplistic, but fundamentally it really is that simple. There's a lot of, some of this tonight and talking with Vril about philosophy and whatever, you can expand upon it. You can develop a lot of concepts and a lot of deeper things on it, but it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. You don't have to make it that complicated. Fundamentally, You build a relationship with the Aesir through the gift cycle. Part of that relationship, if you are Asatru, is being loyal to them. We know how to build relationships with beings. We do that since we are small children. We know how to be loyal to those that we love and that we care about. Again, we do that since we're small children. It is very much that simple, and it can be you can make that deeper and develop that in a lot of really important ways, but that is the biggest fundamental, and that's what's the essential. Okay, we have another question pops up. Lore question. Since many Europeans come from different backgrounds, English, German, French, American, etc., why do we follow only Norse paganism? Why not Greek, Celtic, etc.? Trent, would you like to address that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, English people are Indo-European or Aryan. German people are Indo-European or Aryan. French people are Indo-European or Aryan. American, in the traditional sense of white Americans, are Indo-European or Aryan. So, we all go back to that same common root. So when you think back to, as Witan Young mentioned, that first white man on the Pontic Caspian steppe looking west at the setting sun and kind of just imagining all that was within his grasp, if he only had the courage to go and take it. What gods did he worship? Was it the Celtic ones? Was it the Greek ones? Was it the Norse ones? And the answer is just kind of yes. But we use the Norse corpus of lore specifically for a couple of different reasons. The biggest one, the absolute biggest one, is that is the form that the Aesir, the Aryan gods, chose to make themselves known to our founder, Stephen McNallen, our first Alsharier Gothi. It was All-Father Odin that called to him, and it would be silly for him to, go through all of that and then say, okay, well, I'm going to worship Zeus, and it wouldn't be entirely wrong, I suppose, but you get my point. The other reason is that the Norse corpus of lore is the most complete, or the closest to complete. It's the most recent, and it's easily the least tampered with as far as sources being written down. If you look back at Greek, it was kind of turned into these sort of like comedies and tragedies just for the sake of entertainment. Celtic stuff is closer to what it was supposed to be, but it was tainted a bit by Christian writing. So yeah, those are the two biggest reasons.
Daniel, you have stuff to add?
No, I think the answer is in the question. Since many Europeans come from different backgrounds, why do we only follow Norse paganism? And the answer is because we are Asatru.
Cool. So what I think, and I don't know if Trit hit on this or not, I exploited that opportunity for a bathroom break, but something that I think is important. A lot of people scholastically, when they come to Asatru, come from a place of study, and people who don't approach this as a religion, but a exercise in anthropology or sociology, treat each of these pantheons of gods like distinct things that one group of people, were silly and projected natural phenomenon on, or whatever they rationalize it to. It's very different when fundamentally you take this as a reality and you believe in the existence of the gods. You mentioned American as one of the ethnicities of Europe. America's 200 years old. The gods don't just pop into existence in 1776. And I know that's not I don't mean to diminish the question. It's a very serious question, but it's a logical thing to trace it back. Well, if that's silly and ludicrous, well, what about Englishmen? Well, there were Britons there from an earlier time period. Most of the people that you would know as Englishmen come from continental Europe in, what, 2, 3, 400 AD? Cool. So what were they before that? They come from somewhere. The gods didn't just meet them, at the cliffs of Dover and be like, cool, we exist now. Before that, they migrated. They were Germanic tribesmen before that. Before that, there were, our folk go back certainly to the Ice Age, perhaps before that. Our gods have been with us since we have existed. You can trace the development of our faith through the wanderings of our people, through linguistics, through artifact, material culture, and just through genetic culture. If these are the forces and the gods that created us, they've taken different names in different places. We've known them in different ways at different times. These are the same gods of our folk fundamentally. As our people have evolved due to circumstance, due to location, due to a number of different things, our relationships with our gods have taken different shape and have, our stories have evolved to take on the aesthetic and the material culture of a people at a particular time. But our relationship with our gods exists from the dawn of our race to now. And that's certainly a logical truth. So that the form that they have come to us in the most clear and profound way in this day and age is through the Norse nomenclature and the Norse conception. That is the most complete corpus of lore that we have that's not altered. But what else is really important? That's the force that has made this happen. There's stuff going on in Eastern Europe with Rodnovery that's really cool. It's not this. There's not an equivalency to this with these other pantheons or other variants of our faith. Our gods reestablished the link with us through our founders and their generation, specifically through our founder, Stephen McNallen, under these terms and in this understanding and conception. And that's why this is what we hold to, and this is how we process it to. If not, if we throw up our hands and, well, we could go this way, we could go that, we could do a lot of things. But until we pick one and go with it, we don't get anywhere. This is the one we've picked. This is the way that the gods have reached out to us. And this is the way that has yielded success for the last, better part of 60 years. This is the foundation that we're built upon, and it's working very, very well. So it could have occurred many different ways, but it did occur this way. What else we got here? New folk builder out of Jacksonville, Florida, Alexander Casto, bought us coffee. It's a $5 donation. We appreciate you. We appreciate you stepping up to folk build. Do you guys ever intend on creating a Freya's Hoth? So Nick's graphic is incomplete. There should be a little arrow afterwards that says Frigg and a little arrow afterwards that says Freya. Yes, we absolutely plan on building establishing a Freya's Hof. That will be Hof number 14. That's absolutely the plan. And we look forward to the day we can make that happen. There's a lot to happen between now and then, so it's truly wide open on where that might be located. But we look forward to the day that we can have that and worship Lady Freya in her Hof. All right. Well, so is there any kind of thoughts you'd like to leave folks with about keeping our eyes on the prize, about the concept of creating Gimlé within the wolf age that surrounds us? Is there anything you'd like to leave folks with, Trent?
Yeah, something I kind of spoke about at Njordshof this past weekend for winter finding was that our folk nowadays, especially, we always kind of look back to various times as this golden age of European civilization, whether it was, the around 1776 and the founding of the United States, or the Viking Age is a big one, of course, early Anglo-Saxon days, what have you. And that's a kind of a defeatist attitude, I think, to say that our best days are behind us and we're just kind of existing in this sort of purgatory, for lack of a better term, afterwards, waiting on what? Nothing. So I would like people to kind of consider that the golden age is now, or it's ahead of us. When you woke up this morning or this evening, if you're a night shift person, you woke up to a world with 4 Hofs and a Sigerheim and a 5th and 6th Hof already on the way. You woke up to a world where the Aesir are being actively and properly, might I add, worshipped, where their blessings can be seen in the mundane here in Midgard. The golden age is now, and it's ahead of us as well. So,
something I'd like to throw out to that, or in reference to that a little bit, is this idea that, things were so much better in the past. We have lots to be excited about in the day that we live in. We are rebuilding our faith, and we are gathering our folk back home. That's a process, and that grows over time. But we have access to so much knowledge now that we didn't at the time, and so much ability to communicate and share that knowledge with one another. We live in a day and age where tonight I'm talking to people from across the country and around the world in a way that our ancestors couldn't have conceived of. We have the ability to travel immense distances at relatively low cost and low inconvenience, together with our folk, to go to all these different Hofs, to experience this in such a different, more broad, bigger way than our ancestors had any conception of. We talk about the greatest, rune masters of the ancient period. It was wonderful for them to have the knowledge handed down to them from master to apprentice over however long that line was. But we at our fingertips now have access to the collected runic knowledge of our race over centuries and over thousands of miles. Our ability to access knowledge, to learn from things, to share that is something that our ancestors would be very envious of. So we have a lot of advantages. And over time, we will build back those, wonderful things that our ancestors had, but with the addition of the amazing advantages we currently have. So we have amazing things in front of us, and that should never be forgotten. Daniel, do you have anything that you would like to Any thoughts you'd like to leave folks with this evening to ponder upon?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it, as did Trent, about this, kind of glory, viewing the past through a lens and looking back on a particular time romantically, and when we were on top of the world, and when we were this, and when we were that. And you often hear some people say, I was born at the wrong time. And my retort to that is, no, you were born at precisely the right time. We are the most recent representations of all the people that came before us. And every time you look in the mirror, what the reflection looking back at you is all those generations that came before you, and that you are worthy of. You want to attain being worthy of that blood, and being worthy of that blood right, and that blood right birthright is Asatru. That we lament the decay and the decline of the world, but again, that's existing somewhere else. That Trent mentioned it. I woke up this morning and there were 4 Hoths who jump in my car and have access to 3 of them within the day. No other time in recent history has that been possible. I can, before I was on the Witan, and before I was a Gothi or a folk builder, I had access to the high priest of the Aesir. Mr. Flavel, I need your advice on this or that. I don't think that the average Catholic can pick up the phone and call the Pope, or call their Archbishop. We have access to these things. We were born at particularly the right time, and we were the right people chosen for this. And I believe we were chosen for this. That at some point, our ancestors have cried out to our gods, asking for an heir, and we are that generation that reforged the religion of our people, and at the same time reestablish who our people are. And our people are Asatru. One day, somebody's going to look back at this generation of Asatru and celebrate all of the things that we have accomplished. And we're on the foundational part of the structure right now. We're building it right now. Imagine what's going to be achieved in the future. So rather than looking back longingly at what's past, look forward to what is yet to come, because greatness is still just beyond that horizon, and we're honestly always facing.
Something to remember, guys. And I see some of this being talked about over in the side chat. We live in a time where we are in the very early stages of building this faith for our children, for our grandchildren, for countless generations to come. And we are at a time where individuals can make a massive difference and can be truly, truly foundationally celebrated. You have an opportunity to leave a profound legacy for those to come, and that's a tremendous opportunity we have. And we get it. Don't every one of us on this call, and the vast majority of us involved in this, we're history nerds. We love history. We'll geek out on all kind of cool things of the past. I love things about the past. History has been one of my loves since I could first read. I've loved history, and we all do. We celebrate history. History is amazing. It's really important. None of those people that we read about in whatever glorious age of the past that you think about, they didn't know it was history then. It wasn't history then. It was today, and what am I going to do tomorrow? We are building history today, and 1,000 years from now, kids might read books about us and long for the good old days when Matt and Daniel and Trent were talking to you fine folks. So that's really important. Anything that's celebrated and time honored, everything had a day one. The way it becomes history is by building upon it and by building reputation. And that's how it endures throughout the ages. We have an opportunity to construct that foundation even more solid and even more grand than it currently is. And I'd encourage you all to take part in that. So I think that's a good time to say, if you enjoy this, if you find this meaningful, be part of what we're doing. If you're an AFA member and you don't do anything, do stuff, get together. We've got amazing things happening all the time. If you are not a member, why not? Unless there's, as long as you qualify for membership, you should join and be part of what we're doing. Celebrate with us. We have a lot of work to do. We could use your help, and we would love to celebrate with you. We've got amazing things in the future, but we've got amazing things right now. So think about that. Appreciate you guys listening to us tonight. Daniel, Trent, we love having you guys on. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insight, sharing your wisdom with us and with the folk here and what you guys do every day. We appreciate you guys. Everybody out there listening, until join me next week. Svan and I will be going over Baldur's Drama. It's relatively short, but it's a really important piece of our lore. So look forward to talking to you guys then. Until then, hail the Aesir, hail the folk, hail the AFA. Remember that victory never sleeps.